to take us back to the beginning for
Mhm.
people who aren't aware of how you got William Shatner to actually do a documentary to begin with, because
Yes.
people have been asking him for years and he said no. And I know this all kind of started full circle here with your relationship with Legion M. So if you could maybe just for fans who haven't heard the story yet, kind of talk us through how we got to this point.
Yeah, I know. It's yeah, I mean essentially I had worked with Legion M before and with my company exhibited pictures. They picked up our film Memory: The Origins of Alien at Sundance in 2019, and they're wonderful people, have a wonderful community, very dedicated, and I just had heard that William Shatner had become their new spokesperson. So it was just really very serendipitous, just a kind of a regular sort of catch up, phone call. And I just very casually dropped the question, has there ever been a documentary made about William Shatner? And that's what they said. They said, well, he's been approached, by many documentary filmmakers over the years. He's always said no, but we can give it a shot, So I know that they pushed, and I understand that the film that we made on William Friedkin and The Exorcist, called Leap of Faith, played a little bit of a role in the sense that Friedkin was very, 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 very complimentary. I mean, the film meant a lot to him. Um, and so Shatner eventually agreed to just meet me for lunch, So we met in Studio City over lunch, and I was fully prepared to pitch him sort of my concept for the film. But what struck me was that he really was not at all interested in that. He was interested in me, I mean, he's this eternally curious soul, and he just asking me a lot of questions about life and death in the universe, and we got really sort of like cosmic and existential, and I think we really sort of connected on a lot of levels, and quite frankly, by the end of lunch it was essentially, when do we start? So it happened very organically, you know
You talk about being curious and how he's a very curious person. And quite frankly, that is the number one thing that stood out to me in the documentary.
Right.
I walked away with like this just curiosity. Curiosity being the theme of the documentary, being like you can tell that he just thinks of the world differently with this very curious mindset. When it came to telling his story, because I do think this also feels a little non-traditional in the
Oh,
sense of
completely, yeah.
documentaries,
Mhm.
when it came to telling his story, how much did curiosity play a role in how both of you decided this needed to play out?
Well, completely. I mean, I think that I've always found. I mean, because I am a very curious individual as well. But I find it strange, when you meet people who are allegedly not very curious about things, uh, and when you if you just take a moment to think about the world that we live in, just the miracle of life itself, I find it really hard to not be curious. I mean, just the fact that we're here is mind blowing. Everything that surrounds us is something, I think, to be curious about. So yeah, curiosity played a big role. As you said, the approach was very unique and very different. I mean, it's a thematic approach. I wanted the film to be a distillation of the essence of William Shatner, trying to get to the bottom of really sort of the ideas, the themes that are most important to him at this point in his life, and to structure the film in chapters and essentially delve into those themes individually, and by virtue of going into those themes to reveal aspects of himself, of his childhood, of his teenage years, but in little bits and pieces, to create sort of a fragmented picture, a thematic, picture, a cosmic picture, really, of William Shatner at 93 years of age.
Yeah, and everything you guys dove into, it just seemed so thoughtful all the time. I was really surprised. And I guess I shouldn't be. I just don't know, William Shatner, the person. And it really took me by surprise just how thoughtful he was about everything.
Yeah.
And, there was a chapter where you guys specifically very much so dove into death, which is not always this like happy, positive topic, but the way that it seems like he thinks about it is the same way it seems like he approaches everything in life, which I thought to be quite fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, he says actually that's the line in the film. He says, and talking about death is that what is there to boldly go into? I mean, which is it's such a loaded, it's such a heavy question. When you're 93 and you know that your time is limited. He could be around for another 10 years, and I really hope so. Or 15 or whatever. But his time is obviously statistically much more limited at this point. So. But the film itself, I think, is, and you mentioned death. I mean, the film really is a film about death. Every single chapter, in one way, shape, or form, addresses the idea of death. From the prologue, which is really Shatner telling the story about his first encounter with death, which is when he lost his dog when he was a kid, to the epilogue, which is built around one of his songs called "I Want to Be a Tree," which is what he wants to be when he passes this from this earth. So that's and I know it sounds probably more depressing than it is, but look, I mean, death is a part of life. I mean, death is something that we don't talk about enough. I mean, I think it's easy to forget that we're all going to die. And so, we get so wrapped up in negative emotions, polarizations, vitriol, whether it's, religion, politics, social issues or whatever. There's so much confrontation these days, and yet we forget the basic thing, which is we're all here for a very short amount of time. We're all human beings. We all have loved ones. We all have emotions. So how about trying to take a step back and making life, a little bit easier for each other? It is not rocket science. It really isn't. And I think to hear those words coming from our collective grandfather, if you will, from William Shatner, it's one, it's refreshing, and two, I think it's very important and timely.
Yeah, I actually wrote down while I was watching it, um, kind of something similar to what you just mentioned. And I'd love to get your perspective through after working with William so closely. Um,
You can call him Bill, by
I keep wanting
the
to call him Bill. I'm like, I just want to say it, and I'm like, but he hasn't told me to call him Bill. But after this, I'm like,
way.
Bill, yeah, yeah. But after working so closely with him, I wrote down, like, while I was watching this, how much of our time during our lives is just spent waiting for someone else to do something for us, or for something to happen to allow us to do X, Y, and Z, or, just waiting for that fullness to happen, waiting for that moment that, sparks something else in our lives. And he
Yeah.
really seems like he's lived a life that has not been full of waiting, but has been full of making, doing, showing up, being curious. Um, how do we create fulfillment or a fullness in our own lives now that you've spent so much time with him? Like, what do you think he would say to that?
I think this goes back to curiosity. I think it's about paying attention to what's around you. It's about paying attention to the people who are in your sphere that you meet serendipitously, about asking questions. Because every time you ask a question, every time you turn to something and you see something outside your window and you start asking yourself something, simple about it, it opens a little door, it opens a little window, and then just go through that door, whether it's physically or whether it's in your mind. Just go through it and see what you find. And I think when you start doing that as a practice, then you start your life, I think, comes into motion in a very different way, and you never know what's around the corner. I mean, never in a million years when I was a kid growing up in Switzerland, would I have thought, first of all, that I would be making films, let alone that I would get to make such a film about William Shatner, or a film about William Friedkin, that I would get to meet these people that in a way were, in my mind at the time, really abstract. They're these icons, right? But then when you get to really meet them and roll up your sleeves and really have conversations as, you know, as human beings, you realize, well, they're, you know, they're extraordinary humans, but they are humans, and there's a lot to learn, you know, from them. And I think that has all happened and unfolded as a result. I mean, certainly I can speak just only about my experience, but it's about being curious and following my heart and wanting to, one, you know, doing the things that spoke to me, and then also, of course, having the opportunity, you know, and the luck to be able to do that, and having, you know, my parents, I'm eternally grateful that they supported that and continue to. And well, my mom does. My dad passed away not 10 years ago, but it is a gift, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. For fans who are going to come and watch this movie, who have grown up like with Bill, whether it's been through Star Trek or some of the other projects he's been involved in, you know, what do you hope they walk away from this documentary with? What conversations do you hope they start having after they watch this?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, you know, the messages that we talked about, you know, the you know, the fact that we're here for a short time, we have to we start really taking care about our planet and our environment, and taking care about, you know, each other, taking care of each other, you know, living meaningful lives. It doesn't have to be bold, you know, you don't have to be a worldwide explorer, you know, to live a full life. You can do something in your community. You can help people around you. I mean, that's all very important and very valid, and probably more so than anything else, you know. Giving meaning to your life, and positive meaning to your life. I think that's a very important thing. But also, I think, you know, some people have told me that watching You Can Call Me Bill is as close as it'll get to, you know, spending kind of a casual 90 minutes with Bill himself. You know, like, you know, just in a living room or at a bar or whatever, and having a drink with him, and just talking about life, death, and the universe. And so this idea that this is our sort of collective grandfather, that, you know, we all have some kind of a relationship with him, because he's been in our living rooms multiple times. But this is a guy that who, you know, has a gift of storytelling, who has a gift of being able to communicate very big ideas in ways that are truly accessible to all of us. And so, yes, it's a philosophical film, but it's not a didactic film. You know, he's not going to hit you on the head. It's a film that I've seen now, because I've been touring with it for about a year, that people connect with emotionally, and that, as you've said, really surprises people. And so I think for those reasons, people need to go and see it.
Yeah, I love that you keep calling him our collective grandfather. Because he feels like that. He feels like I'm
Yeah,
watching a grandpa on screen and learning so much knowledge from this person who's just approaches life so differently from what we're used to seeing from so many.
for sure.
Um, he also feels like an educator in that sense too. And I've got to tell you that I was very much so inspired by this. You know, I'm in my mid 30s now, you know, where there's a lot going on in the world. And I've been having this conversation lately with myself, those around me, of how do we find happiness in life? How do we
Yeah.
keep finding happiness? Is it something that some people are just blessed with and others aren't? It can't be that way. And after watching this movie, I really, really loved uh, Bill's approach to being curious and showing up and walking through the doors that you mentioned. When a door opens, say yes, go through it. And I have to tell you, that has inspired me to go out and find what happiness is and to start doing things I may not have done before. Just go have experiences and see where that leads, because I think there's something to that.
Oh, 100%. And you know, the thing that's funny that I think so many people forget, because it's also really easy. And I'm saying this with empathy. It's easy for all of us to get wrapped up in our little problems, you know, so often. But you know, there's one simple thing, which is, and I think it's universal, when you do something to make somebody happy, to help someone, even if it's a small thing, it brightens up your day. You know, it's amazing. And so those small deeds, and Bill talks about this in the film, You know, those small things that you do, it's like the butterfly effect, right? It's like it has this ripple effect in ways that you will not even comprehend sometimes. You know, so I'll give you an example. When you know, when well, we've all had issues with airlines or whatever, and you have to, yeah, once at some point you have to call, you have to get on the phone with the customer service department, and you know, so many times they'll just shut you down. You know, you'll have somebody who basically is a no person. So what I do, my practice is, when this happens and I can feel the conversation is not going to go anywhere, I'll like, thank you so very much, and I hang up, and then I call the same line again, and then I do it until there's someone with a positive attitude of like, I'm going to help you, until I can get that kind of a person on the phone. And oftentimes you're having the same conversation with two people who are essentially being given the same directions. One of them is going to help you, and the other one is going to do whatever they can to use the very small power that they have to get in your way. It's interesting, isn't it? And so, but think about this. If we all had this attitude of, what can I do to help you? What can I do to solve your problem? I'm seeing you struggle with this thing. Do you want to talk? Can we talk about this? Can I go get you a coffee? I mean, you know, those tiny little things, but imagine a world where we all do that. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. It's in our hands to do that. And once you do that to someone else, I think that person becomes more prone to doing the same thing for someone else as well. You pass it forward, you
Yeah.
know.
So to wrap things up here, is that the legacy that both of you want to leave with this documentary? Is it show up for somebody else, say yes, be more curious, and just be a positive person in the world?
I mean, I can't obviously speak for Bill. I think the film speaks for Bill. I would probably venture to say, if he were here, that would be a big part of what he would want to say. For me, yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we need positivity, you know, in the world. Again, and I'm looking, I mean, right now I'm in New York City and staying with some friends, and you know, I'm in Newark, and I have this beautiful view of Manhattan. I'm literally like on the Hudson, looking at Manhattan, and I'm like, what an amazing thing, you know? It's you're looking at these millions of people and their lives and all the things that are going on, and these beautiful clouds and the beautiful river, and you know, what is there to not be curious about, or in awe or wonder of? Even on a gray day, even on a rainy day, even if you're not in a beautiful place, if you're not in Hawaii, you know, it's like, and so I'm really sick and tired of this sort of like the influencer mentality, or these people just posting stuff on Instagram of like, you know, by the pool. It's great, you know, like it's awesome to be by a pool. It's awesome to be in a beautiful place. But there is beauty and wonder to be found anywhere, with just about anybody, if you are willing to have a conversation and reach them and try and find out who they are, which is the practice that Bill has done throughout his career. And I think that we all can learn from that, for sure.
I feel like that was the perfect way to end this interview.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you again for your time today. I could go on and talk so much longer about this film. We didn't get to space. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm very
Thank you.
excited for it to hit theaters. We're taking a whole crew, my husband and I, on Saturday.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we're having a big Shatner party on Saturday.